afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this afternoon session. I see so many ladies joined, also men, but I'm going to welcome especially the ladies this afternoon: Lani, Lulu, Lesejo, Megan, Nana, Natalie, Natasha. Welcome to everyone. It is such a pleasure to welcome you all this afternoon to our special August webinar for Women's Month, the journey to the boardroom and beyond. Before we sink our teeth into today's topic, just a quick reminder of the webinar functionalities. Remember, you are more than welcome to post any questions in the Q&A box. We will address them there at the end of the session. We will also allow you to voice your questions, in which case you can raise your hand and we will enable your voice functionality. If you would like to just share any general comments or links, you can put those in the chat box. Today's topic then, the journey to the boardroom and beyond. Our guest speakers will share their experiences in getting to the boardroom and operating effectively once there. Our panel for this webinar consists of Louisa Stephens. Louisa Stephens, an independent financial trader, is also an independent NED at MultiChoice Group, Royal Bafokeng Platinum, and Straight and Netcare Limited. With a background including roles at KPMG, Umnotu Fund, Rand Merchant Bank, Nozala Investments, and Circle Capital Ventures, she has been a key figure at IoDSA since 2017, including having served in positions like Chair of the Audit Committee and Lead Independent Director. She is currently the Chair of the IoDSA Board. She excels in areas such as strategy, risk management, finance, and corporate governance. She firmly embraces the philosophy of approaching her work for the organization with the same care and ownership as if it were her own business. Then Eileen Wilton. Eileen Wilton has a diverse background as both a non-executive and executive director for top South African companies. She has held CEO, COO, and CIO roles, recognized for her bold leadership, effective decision-making, and fostering positive change. Her mission revolves around nurturing future leaders in our competitive economy through coaching, mentoring, consulting, and strategic facilitation. She serves as NED on the boards of Sasfin Bank, Shoprite, and Growthpoint, amongst others. Her tenure on the IoDSA board started in 2019 and is currently serving on the Audit and Risk Remuneration Committee and also the chair of the IoDSA Social and Ethics Committee. Lastly, we've got Prof. Natesan. Prof. Parmi Natesan, CEO of the IoDSA, is a champion of good corporate governance and ethical leadership. She is a recognized corporate governance specialist in the country, known for her thought leadership and media presence. Her transformative impact is evident through her efforts to enhance gender diversity in leadership roles and her dedication to empowering young women. She has served as an NED on the boards of PPS and Alviva Holdings and currently serves on St. Peter's College. She also represents the IoDSA on key bodies including the King Committee, the Integrated Reporting Committee, and advocating gender diversity through the 30% Club. We are fortunate enough to have all three of these panelists today are chartered directors, so I'm sure you will learn a lot from them and their journeys. Panel, you are more than welcome to switch on your cameras, and Parmi, you can take over.
Thank you so much, Johandi, for the introduction, and a very warm welcome to all our members who've joined us this afternoon. So as the CEO of the IoDSA, one of the most common questions I get asked from our members is how they can get appointed to boards as non-executive directors. And what I often find is that people think that because they're really good at their current jobs, they will automatically make really good non-executive directors. And I often have to burst their bubble a little and tell them that directorship has its own unique competencies. It's a profession in its own right. So a great lawyer or a great accountant doesn't necessarily make a great non-executive director. So I'm going to start off with you, Eileen. Having been an executive before and now a non-executive, what do you find are the unique skills needed in order to serve as an NED?
Good afternoon, Parmi and team and panelists. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to your audience and to the women leaders, especially who are aspiring to be NEDs. Good afternoon, everyone. So for me, when I think about what I've learned since becoming a NED, I too thought that with my business experience, it would be an easier transition to be a NED. But I found that there was a lot of learning and continues to be a lot of learning. When I thought about it, I thought of it in terms of 5 areas: business acumen, governance knowledge, some financial and business astuteness, emotional intelligence, and integrity. And whilst I think that those 5 qualities encompass what you need to be a NED, I rather like us to think about what I've learned is what is part of the Chartered Director learning, which is the Director Competency Framework. And this framework is a framework that the IoD uses, together with everything from King, to actually grow and develop us as NEDs. It helps us to develop our knowledge. What is our knowledge about corporate governance? It helps us to draw on our experience in the business world, but to fine-tune that for the role of being a board executive. And it helps us to draw on our skills. There are a wide range of skills you need in a boardroom. I spoke about some of the, in my summary, emotional intelligence skills. The boardroom is an area that you need to navigate. So interpersonal skills, the ability to deal with conflict, the ability to participate, observe, and learn, and to negotiate. So these skills are all contained in this competency framework. And these are the things that I've called on. This competency framework, of course, is underpinned by your fundamental values. And as you know, in the IoD, our code of conduct contains the fundamental values and the professional conduct of directors. And for me, without that, I don't think you're ready to become an accomplished NED, in particular of large corporations. Parmi, back to you. You're muted.
If everyone can please excuse me, I'm going to mute when I can, because with this BRICS summit happening, there's all sorts of sirens happening around Sandton at the moment. So one of the things that stuck with me, Eileen, that actually the late Tony Dixon mentioned to me, who was CEO of the IoD many years back, he said to me, in his view, some of the best NEDs were usually previously great executives. And how have you found your previous roles as CEO, CIO, COO contributes to your performance as a non-executive now?
Yes, Parmi, you know, they do in surprising ways. First of all, in your role as a NED, you are called upon to perform not only a role in the board, but in board committees. So the roles you've held before go to establishing credibility. What have you done before? What have you touched? What have you contributed to? And that experience is utilized by the board nominations committee to determine which board committees you serve on, which ones you can chair, which ones you serve as a member of. So getting to the first interview is very important as a step. And your previous company experience dictates and enables you to do that. But that is only the very small step in this journey. The second part is in the boardroom, navigating your deliverables in the boardroom, which is hard skills and soft skills. Board work is thinking work. It is creative work. It is research work. All of that has to be done on the layers of the skills and knowledge and experience you've got. And it is with that that you come into a boardroom ready to navigate the journey with your board. When you come into a board, you think you've got a lot of experience. You may or may not have, but I can assure you the journey on the board is its own journey. Sometimes I think of it, it's a little bit having a tiger by the tail. We in Africa don't have tigers, so maybe it's a leopard, not sure. But because every board is on its own journey, every business has its own organic path, and things change. So what you've got as experience serves as a backdrop, a necessary and fundamental backdrop for you. But then you start a new journey of discovery. And on a board, you need to use that set of knowledge and skills, and you have to keep yourself fresh by constantly staying up to date, by constantly thinking, doing research, so that you can contribute effectively in the boardroom. Parmi, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you. That was lovely, those insights, Eileen. Thanks for sharing. Then the other thing I often feel when I see people inquiring about board positions, and especially our IoD members, is for me, they appear to want to jump straight into your big listed entities and be earning what they think is going to be a lot of money for just a couple of meetings a year. So I think the first part of my question, and I'm going to come to you, Louisa, is, how would you suggest young professionals go about obtaining some directorial skills that Eileen has already spoken about? Where should they start getting this experience to ultimately be able to serve on these larger boards later on?
Thank you, Parmi. Good afternoon, everyone. It's really good to be here with you this afternoon. A special welcome to the women. Eileen, hit the nail on the head there. Your corporate governance knowledge and the combination of the experience that you acquire as an individual throughout your career, it places you in a position to, be able to contribute on a board. One needs to have the corporate governance knowledge, including King 4, understand your duties and obligations, that are placed on you by the Companies Act as a director. And it's not a surprise that, the three of us on the panel today, are all chartered directors. You need some sort of knowledge and skills to be able to apply to add value onto a board. I would go about, by getting some sort of certification, whether it be certified director or chartered director, which you can get through the IoDSA, or a governance, qualification through a university or a business school. And then once you have gotten that, I would then consider what is my competitive edge as an individual. The governance qualification by itself will not make you marketable as an NED. Each and every NED that serves on a board is required to have corporate governance knowledge and be able to understand, what they're there to do and how they need to go about serving a director. So you actually need a core skill that the prospective board requires, and that can be in areas such as accounting, it can be legal, it can be operations, it can be data and technology. These days, AI is very important, marketing, PR, social media management, and many other areas where companies want people who have an area of specialization where they can provide assistance and guidance. Then it takes a lot of time and investment to actually build a respectable board portfolio. You should expect that it will take you at least 3 to 4 years to build that respectable board portfolio. But you have to be realistic and start small. You will not parachute up to, the biggest board there is. There is a lot of competition, and you need to earn your stripes to get to that position. So you have to start, very small. One of the ways to start serving as a director is being on the boards of pro bono or nonprofit companies. Look at serving on school governing bodies, your churches, your homeowners association or body corporates. And for people who work in bigger corporates, they may be lucky enough to be in a position where they are asked to serve on a subsidiary or associate board. But just be aware that this will be in addition to your normal responsibilities on a day-to-day basis. And so, some investment of time and sacrifice, is required to get to a point, where you are in a position to be considered for larger boards. Then, once you have, gathered the experience, you have served your time and built up your portfolio and gained experience, please be realistic and actually realize that when you go for these big board positions, you are competing against very deeply experienced executives and managers, entrepreneurs, people who are captains of industry, who are very respected in the market. So it will not be an easy process. You start level by level and learn as you go and continue to apply what you've learned to grow as an executive director and, start to earn some gravitas and, make a difference on the boards that you serve on. Thanks, Parmi. Go back to you.
Thanks, Louisa. So then just following up on the second part of my statement earlier is this notion of non-executive directorship being easy money for just a few meetings a year. This perception or misconception out there. What's your view on this, Louisa?
I often laugh when I hear that, Parmi. I think it's important to know that the caliber of individual that will thrive as a non-executive director is a person that has deep experience as a senior manager, as an executive in operational roles or in a specialized area. Those are areas that the board requires, some help in. So this person needs to be in a position where they can add value. And these are the sort of people who would be in demand in the market, who, attract and command, very high salaries as, managers, consultants, executives. So when boards attract NEDs on their boards, they need to, have remuneration that is commensurate with the level of work and is competitive to attract and retain those people. Because they could be otherwise, be working as a high-flying executive or running their own businesses. And the other thing is that one often needs to give up their security blanket, that is your monthly salary that you get, to start getting taken seriously as, a non-executive. So it takes investment to actually get to a point where you're able to serve as a non-executive and be taken seriously by those boards. And they know that, when you join their board, you're not going to run off and, take a job because it's too hard. Then, it's a fallacy that, being a non-exec, is just attending 4 meetings a year. When a board appoints you, they appoint you with the expectation that you have a specialization and you will take a leadership role within the board. And that comes with either chairing a committee or chairing a board. And that is not really a once a quarter endeavor. There are a lot of meetings and engagements with management in between meetings, during the quarter. You need to remain connected with management, the chair, other committees of the board. And there are many times, where you have ad hoc meetings, there are ad hoc approvals that are required. That requires then additional work that you need to do. A non-executive is not appointed to attend quarterly meetings, but rather to provide oversight and guidance throughout the year. And to be able to do that, you need to be aware of what's happening in the economy, locally and globally. You need to understand the dynamics that impact the risks that affect the industries that you're working on. So the research that Eileen spoke to, that requires a lot of time investment, reading journals, newspapers, going to conferences, CPD training to get yourself up to speed, particularly when there are new areas that impact, on your career on a board. Then in addition to that, you need to actually then realize that the board, when they look at prospective candidates, they're not looking for passengers. They're looking for people who will take leadership. Those are people who will get involved, stay involved, keep in touch. And when there are difficult times like we had during COVID, or if there is a turnaround situation, NEDs are expected to get stuck in and deal with the risks and find solutions. So, there is a lot of interactive, work that happens in between, and it requires additional work, often which, that additional work would not be, remunerated, or there wouldn't be any additional fees for. So it is a comprehensive job. I think, because board members are seen quarterly at meetings, other employees around would not necessarily see them when they pop in to the office to deal with other matters, or be aware of other meetings that may be more ad hoc in nature. It is a full-blown career, and it requires a lot of investment, which is why often people who are still stuck in a corporate career find it very difficult to break into a career as a non-executive director. I hope that it gives a sense of the kind of work that one can expect.
Absolutely. Thanks, Louisa. I'd just like to remind our attendees today that if you have questions, please post it in the question and answers box and not in the chat box. Later on, when we open up for questions, I'll be looking in the Q&A box to see what you'd like to ask our esteemed panelists today. I'll also see a comment from Kathy Hurley, which I think is important. And she says, as much as it's a great privilege to be on a board, it's just as important to be careful about the boards that you select, because the responsibilities are so arduous. One of the things we pick up at the IoD is people are so keen and willing to serve on boards that they don't actually realize that they're also making a choice of whether to serve on that board, and not just the board choosing you to serve on. It's very important that your values align, that you consider who the rest of the board members are, because ultimately you're bound by the collective decisions on that board that you're joining. So Eileen, Louisa, from your bios that we read out earlier, it's pretty obvious that you are in enviable positions of serving on a number of substantial boards in South Africa. Can you give us some insights into what it took to get you to this point of having the board portfolios that you have today? So I'm going to start with you, Eileen. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey to the boardroom?
Thank you, Parmi. It's quite difficult for me to describe my journey, because by the very nature of you being in this webinar, you're already 5 steps ahead of me. When I had my last CEO position, of course, what was next for me? Well, the logical answer, I was in my 50s, was another CEO position. And so I started my own journey of discovery, networking with other senior women, networking with headhunters. I even did an executive coaching course through UCT, so that I could become a certified executive coach, which I still use today. And through one of my networking activities, I met 2 women who are in my list of real dynamic women to know. And the one lady said to me, well, she's studying with the IoD. She had enrolled for the director series 1 to 4. She said, Eileen, I think you could be a director. Why don't you have a look at it? And the IoD had that course, that half-day course, so you want to be a non-executive director. And for me, that's sort of, when I went to it, it sort of opened a window that I had not thought of. I can't tell you today why I had not ever thought of or concluded before that moment that this was a path for me. But most certainly, having been on that course, in my career, in my formal career, where I was eventually CIO, COO, CEO, I was often breaking new ground, in particular for women. And I have always aspired to be a good role model for women. And it occurred to me that the boardroom was a new frontier. There were women in the non-executive director roles, but most certainly at the time, when Colleen Larson did the exercise to look at the JSE, there were less than 7% of the JSE companies having women directors. And I realized that actually, in addition to me being intrigued by the role, that most certainly I could play a role in South Africa to be contributing to good corporate governance and to contribute to women in the boardroom. One, through role modeling, and two, through breaking through that barrier. Because part of what we do by simply being there is we show our colleagues what women executives can be like in the boardroom. And it is because of that actually I went the whole hog to do my learning and chartered directorship. Because if I'm going to aspire to be a role model and lead the way, then actually I've got to be the best version of myself that I can be. And part of being the best version of myself that I can be is to be knowledgeable and to be professional and to be expert. And so from that, I made the decision to be a chartered director. Being a little bit more mature than quite a lot of you, I found it a little intimidating to enter that route, but I am delighted that I had the opportunity to do so. So from there, I had already sat on boards and been in leadership positions. So in my corporate career, even though I never knew about it, when Louisa says the route to boardrooms is, if you're in a corporate, to see if you can get on some of their committees. I'd already been a trustee on the medical aid. I'd already been we had an internal software company, and I was a non-executive director for that company within a company. I definitely was the chairman of the Homeowners Association, or the SRA as we have in the Western Cape. I was the lady captain of Danefern, and I ran obviously those committees and so on. So I had done all of those kinds of things already. And so it seemed logical and natural once I discovered this new path available to me to try and enter. And yes, Louisa says it takes 3 or 4 years. I find for myself, please don't take on too many board positions at once. It is overwhelming and you will not be able to perform. When you get offered board positions, as Parmi says, not only are you putting your best foot forward, but you need to think about your portfolio of boards, how they sit together, and whether you can manage the workload. Parmi, that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you, Eileen. And just for our audience, there's also a paper that we've recently released on the number of board seats that one should consider and the factors to be taken into account when considering the optimum number. If you wish to see that paper, you'll find it under publications on our website. Thank you so much, Eileen. Louisa, over to you. How did you work your way to having the NED portfolio that you have today?
Well, I think, similar to Eileen, I sort of stumbled, onto it because, when I started my career in investment banking, I presented to committees all the time as a credit analyst, as a deal maker. So I was used to dealing with, investment committees, credit committees, and boards. And eventually, as I grew in seniority and started to gain more experience, I would get sent as, a representative, of, the bank, to see what's happening at, in that investee company. And, initially it wasn't as a full-blown, non-executive. It would really be a representative role. And, that grew then to being eventually, being appointed as a non-executive on small, investee companies, small private companies, and learned my way, to actually navigate the space. I think, when I got my first, non-executive, board position on the board of an investee company for one of our portfolio companies, I first realized that, this job, requires a lot of responsibility. I'd been thrust for the first time into an audit committee. I sort of knew what I needed to do there because I had served articles and had, been on audit committees, presenting my paper, at the audit committee. But, taking on that responsibility as an executive director, it was, a new thing for me. At that point, I started, doing some research. That's how I came across the IOD. I decided to, become a member. And, at the time, because I was still involved in my full-time, career, that was not really, a serious consideration. I think it was only when I decided that, I want to take this opportunity of being an executive director as a profession that I started taking, things more seriously. I started investing more time in education. I also went through, being a director, 1 to 4, and tried to do as many courses as I could. And, at the time, because I had gone down this path and jumped into the deep end, not realizing what a mammoth task I had taken, it actually required financial investment at a time that I had withdrawn, from my career as, a senior manager and, and eventually an executive. And I had to make an investment from my savings. Number one, to actually seek, the designation as a chartered director, and secondly, to go through all the courses to try and equip myself to be ready to take on, serious boards. My first opportunity to serve on a listed board, interestingly, was an opportunity that I came across through the IoDSA NED vacancy ads. I was very naive when I looked at them. I applied to many of them. I didn't realize how competitive it was until I got, my first opportunity at Avery. And it is only, when I got there and I started talking to the company secretary that I actually realized that I was very arrogant and very overconfident in thinking that, I will come sailing in with my experience of on small companies and, be sought after. And I realized at that point that, this is a very competitive market. You have very deeply experienced people who have been executives for a very long time, who are retired and come with 20, 30, 40 years of experience and are able to plow that back into the companies that they serve on. So it is a process. But the other thing that I think, took things a step up is that when I got the first opportunity, I used that opportunity and capitalized on it. And I was diligent in making sure that I am prepared. I do extra research. I spend a lot of time learning that company, trying and finding, what is it that I can do and add value that is different from, what all the other board members around me are doing. And using that strategically. So if there are 5 accountants around the table, don't think that you're going to come there as an accountant and be the expert and provide them with all the help they need. You need to find yourself a niche. And then you need to align yourself with other board members that are there. Get a mentor who has been around, who's been around the block, who knows how to do it, and get the right guidance to start your career right. I think for me, that has been a huge opportunity to unlock, other opportunities in the market by showing that I was dedicated, I was there and contributed. I did not sit quietly within the meetings. The people around me saw the potential in me and, opened up, opportunities to serve on other boards. As women, we are actually there as gatekeepers as well, on the boards. And, we need to see where new skill and talent is in the market and find ways to mentor, guide, and help other, aspiring directors, to actually, get opportunities onto boards and eventually grow a portfolio. a huge part of my success today has been because, I had alliances, with other women who were on boards and, look for opportunities to assist me. And also, I myself, actually returning, that, that favor and actually helping other people, by growing that network of people, who understand, where the talent is, who the new people are on the board, and not sticking to the very same people who are being circulated around and around. I think it's the only way that we start to grow diversity and have, more women, starting to serve on non-executive boards, particularly, the bigger corporates.
Absolutely agree with you, Louisa. Two things that I often tell our members who are in this looking to grow their exposure to this NED space is the one of building your own personal profile. And you've mentioned already building those networks, right? But for me, it goes a step further than building networks with the people you're working with, but also just even being active on social media and in thought leadership pieces and that sort of thing, so that your name starts becoming familiar in the business world. And then when people hear your name or see your application, they recognize the name and they give you an opportunity for an interview or whatever the steps are. The other is the importance of your board level CV, which is different to your seeking a job CV. When we advertise vacancies to members, we're told that there are hundreds of applications going to these organizations. I mean, an organization may get 700 CVs coming for a non-executive director position. How is your one CV going to stand out from the rest? And I think it's really about being very concise and clear about what value you're going to bring to that board. So they don't want to read about everything you've ever done in your career, every position you've had, and every the job descriptions of each of those positions. They really want to see what's going to make you a great non-executive. Your CV is the first impression that these companies get of you when you apply for a non-executive role. So it's very important that you get that right and get your foot in the door to then be invited for an interview. Before we move away from you, Louisa, there was just, since you mentioned audit committee already and you having a finance background, there was one question I thought I just posed to you from the Q&A box, and that was Cindy Seaway asked, how difficult is it to serve on a subcommittee that you're not an expert on, but are passionate about? So for example, a CA serving on a social and ethics committee instead of an audit committee. What's your views on that, Louisa?
Well, it is possible. I have done it. And it is intimidating. But I think, there are a lot of tools and information to actually get you up to speed. The IoD does, present courses on, what is required of one, in a social and ethics committee. And I think one of the things that helped is having gone through those courses, even though I did not have the practical experience, I had the theoretical knowledge and, use that to apply myself in terms of, then, what I would be looking for, as a SEC member. I think one of the other things that helped as well is that, I was volunteered to serve as a transformation representative, on one of my employer's transformation committees. I think a committee that often a lot of people, get volunteered onto, and, is a very difficult political manual to navigate when you've got a corporate career, but it sort of teaches you some of the things that one needs to know about transformation, and continuing to be curious and learn about ESG, climate change. Is a huge field that one can start learning about to get yourself ready. On the topics that would be discussed at different committees. But at the end of the day, as a non-executive director, you need to be versatile. You need to be strategic, and the way that you're able to actually develop those skills is by constant research, constant CPD. keeping in touch with what's happening and new developments and learning, throughout your career to get yourself ready for the next step. And you will find that, you will probably start, with an audit committee, then grow to a social and ethics committee. And as you start understanding issues of REM, then you'll get co-opted onto the remuneration committee and get the difficult job of being the remuneration committee chair, which, a lot of people are scared of because it involves very delicate stakeholder relations. But as you grow in confidence in your knowledge and your ability to conduct yourself, as a leader, and be able to negotiate with other, strong stakeholders, within, the market and the ecosystems, you'll find that, those roles you might be initially nervous to step into, but you'll get comfortable over time and try and model, other, chairs and committee chairs who you think do a job well. Spend time with them, have coffees with them to find out, how do they go about, these sort of issues and challenges? How do they get themselves ready? And by getting those nuggets from people who, have gone before you and have traveled the path that, you're looking to travel, you learn the do's and don'ts and, draft, plan for yourself to follow, on this journey.
Thanks, Louisa. Eileen, before I pose my question to you, I see one in the chat box, in the Q&A box that I thought you may answer, just based on your experience with 30% Club, IWFSA, and etc. Ntombi Bart is asking, any advice for women to leverage their unique feminine skills and qualities to excel in non-executive director roles?
Thank you, Parmi, for that excellent question. So we as women bring something different, but being different on a board is not always the easiest thing. Every company, as we know, has its own culture, and every board has its own culture. So the first thing I think is, as women, we have to think about the messaging we give ourselves. The messaging, is it positive? So many women suffer from imposter syndrome. And when you are worrying all the time about do I belong? Are they going to accept me? All of those things, it actually creates so much noise in your head that it's quite hard to show up. So the first thing is, as women, switch the noise off and be confident. Think about who you are and why you've been selected to be there, and be the best version of your authentic self. So that's my first thing. Now, if you are in that state, you are emotionally ready to participate in the boardroom, ready to participate as a whole human being, not worrying about all the gender issues that happen everywhere. In boardrooms, not every boardroom is ready for women. Go figure. So the thing is, the reason I'm talking about you focusing on yourself and being ready is you have to be confident. And it is through that quiet confidence that you bring, you can actually focus on the issues at hand, not take things sensitively that shouldn't be taken sensitively, and give input to the content on the paper. The content on the paper is always about hard content, which means you've got to do your work. You've got to know your board governance, your competencies. You've got to do all of that. But then as women, apply your intuition. I find it extraordinary in how many boards I find myself thinking about, what is the message that is sitting behind this conversation? And is there something, some knowledge I have that is unique to this issue that I could bring here to actually help move it in the right way? So it's in that way, through your confidence, through quietening noise in your head, through doing your work, you can then tap into your intuition and interject in the right way. And I think that's something very special and unique us women who are intuitive can bring into the boardroom and make a very positive difference.
Absolutely. I'm also going to touch on two other questions while I'm on the Q&A box, and I'll just give some of my perspectives on them. I see Lesego is asking, what would be the best way to gain board experience while still in a corporate role? And Anusha similarly is asking, is it advisable for NEDs to have a full-time role? Many boards have NEDs that already have full-time roles, hence the board role is in addition. I think, ladies, from my perspective, and I'm one of those who's serving as an full-time executive as well as having permission to have a non-executive role. The first is obviously negotiation with your board on, what's permissible and how the practicalities are going to work. Would you need to take leave for those board meetings? The board fee, how does that work? And I think that all needs to be clearly communicated upfront before you even accept a position. I just find serving as a non-executive, I feel makes me a better executive when I come here, because I almost have a better expectation of what my board is wanting from me. And similarly, the other way around, serving as an executive, I believe makes me a better non-exec, because I tend to then know, how management may be thinking in a given situation. So I think there's definitely benefits to doing both. Obviously, you can't take on too much. So you can't do one to the detriment of the other. You need to have sufficient capacity to be able to do so. So Eileen, I think let's move on then, right? Let's say somebody now is fortunate enough to get their big break and they get their first non-executive director position. What advice would you give them in order to settle in onto that board and make a good impression and be able to start adding value?
Thank you, Parmi. So let's assume that as part of your board recruitment, you already are familiar with their website, their apps, their integrated report. So by the time you get appointed on the board, you know something about the company. But I don't know if you're like me, I take a while to be familiar, as opposed to having read and be able to talk to it for a short while. When you're on the board, you've got to really know your stuff. You've got to understand the company structure and what have you. So the first thing is, obviously, you do need to attend board induction. No matter how well you've prepared for your interviews, you need to attend board induction. If the company doesn't offer board induction immediately, you can gently prod them and say to the company secretary, when is my board induction? That always acts as a prod. Most companies have board induction programs. And one of the things I found in terms of doing board induction, there are going to be areas that you easily disseminate and areas where you need in-depth knowledge. So very often as a new person on the board, you already know from the chairman which board committees you're going to be part of. And so those areas are the areas you've got to get on top of quickest. And any knowledge you need, ask. It's extraordinary to me how incredibly kind and generous the most busy executives are, the most busy other board members are, and are willing to explain things and are willing to give of their time to help you get to speed. That's one aspect. The other aspect is, don't be shy to ask the culture questions. So if I need to do the following here, how do we do things here? Those are the funny, unspoken rules about that organization and that company. And so you need to get both the content and you need to understand a bit of the culture. On every board, I always do go to good old investment analysts to get a sense from them about what's working and not working in the company. I normally do that as part of recruitment. And then keep your network, keep networking about the company on the board and with the executives, people who've worked with them before that are in your network. Keep asking, keep talking. So that's how I think you go about it. Getting up to speed and operating as a new board member, ask before talking, and remember that as you move forward. And you will find it's an extraordinary opening up of knowledge and sharing. Thank you, Parmi.
Such useful comments there, Eileen. Thank you so much. Louisa, I see a question in the Q&A box. It says, does it really matter that your expertise is specific to a certain industry? For example, could you serve on an insurance board without having insurance knowledge or expertise? Or is it advisable that you need the industry expertise in order to serve?
I find that business principles are universal, and one can apply them in many different industries. But there are certain sectors that are specialized, that require specialized knowledge. So banking and insurance would be such. Technology companies companies they require people who are familiar with the land and understand the intricacies of the platforms and the infrastructure that everyone would be dealing with. So in those areas, some knowledge specialization is advantageous, but it does not necessarily preclude you from getting involved in those industries. Like anything that you are interested in, it starts with learning about the industry. You may need to start small. So if we take the insurance example, you might perhaps try and learn about funerals and start with a small funerals insurance business instead of a very complicated, diversified insurance company, and learn the speak, what regulators expect out of non-execs, which is a little bit more than one is expected to do as a normal non-executive for, say, an industrial company. But that's going to take some time, because you're going to develop that knowledge over time. And I would spend a little bit of time with the firms, get on their courses and updates about what happens in those industries, if that's something that is of particular interest to you. I think ultimately you need to be strategic and understand what are the building blocks to get to the level that you should get to. And it might take, some time to ultimately gather the knowledge and experience that you need to then be effective, in that board position. But it's not impossible. It is doable, but, you as an individual will actually need to take the initiative to make it happen.
Thanks. I want to acknowledge Pindy's comment in the chat box, where she says, she's going to be sitting through her first board induction next week in a role that she got through the IoD's vacancies, and she has an interview for a second one next week as well. So congratulations, Pindy. So now, Louisa, for Pindy, what advice do you have? I mean, you've, on your numerous boards, seen examples of it not working out with some NEDs as well. So what are some of the mistakes you've seen new NEDs make that you could maybe advise us against when we're newly serving on boards?
So Eileen has already given some germs around, doing your due diligence. You must first do the due diligence before you get on that particular board. I think what's important is understanding the company, try and understanding who the leaders are in that company, and whether from your knowledge, from your network, so those are the sort of people that you'd be able to, work with, engage with, and be collegial with. And if you happen to know that this individual that, you and them are oil and water, it's probably not, not best to consider that particular board. Find something else. There are a lot of opportunities. So start there. But once you get on the board, of course, go through your induction process and spend some time meeting with executives, the chair of the committees, the chair of the board, try and understand the dynamics, of, the committees and the board, and not just, the hard information that, you have to learn to get familiar with that business. And then the next important step is assimilating into that culture, learning the culture, sitting back and looking at how things are conducted, within that board. The mistake that I often see, particularly with the young people, is that they want to go in and they think that they're the Messiah that's being brought on to save the company, and they want to change everything. That's the worst thing that you can do. At worst, you will offend everyone around you and you'll alienate them, and it will make it even more difficult for you to, settle on that board. Spend time to learn how the board functions, learn, what their processes are, because, the board cycles, are every quarter. It takes time to learn how things function, and you don't see everything during your first meeting. So be patient. Look at what is happening. Of course, when there are areas where you've got questions, you can add value, or do that. But before you want to change things, wait and see how things work, and then start to give constructive feedback. And often couched as, perhaps, there's something that I'm missing. I'm to understand since, I'm new to this environment. So, please correct me if I'm wrong. Is this not the case? Or is there something that I'm missing? So couch it like that so that it's not offensive to the people that you're talking to. They'll see that, you're trying to learn, you're trying to, add value and, find gaps and add your experience, and, not there to try and change things without, firstly appreciating, the groundwork that has been laid there. And then, once you've done that, learn to engage with people, get to know, your colleagues. Often you'll find that, there may be a little bit of a blockage and perhaps you don't get across within meetings, but, by getting to know, the people that you're working with, you'll start getting a sense of, how messages, how to craft a message that will be accepted well, and that will translate in a manner that you'd like to achieve. So it takes time, it takes patience, it takes humility, and develop your space, and your role within that.
Thanks, Louisa. Such wonderful golden nuggets coming out of this session, and time is not on our side to take all the questions, unfortunately. Just to let our delegates know that we will also be sharing the recording on social media if you want to encourage your colleagues to listen to it. Eileen, from your side, Louisa earlier mentioned mentorship, and I see there was a question as well from Onika in the Q&A where she was asking, what advice would you give someone requesting mentorship from an experienced NED? But what's your view on the value of mentorship apart from the technical knowledge and skills that we already spoke about? And how do you think someone could go about obtaining that mentorship?
First of all, there's often a technical definition difference between executive coaching and mentoring. And I'm not going to go into that technical difference. But whether you've got executive coaching or mentoring, what they do for you is they provide the ability to look at you and your life from a different perspective. You know the old saying of close to the coalface. Well, the thing is, sometimes when you're that close, you can't see the patterns. And what a mentor and coach does is, with their ability to be removed from the coalface, they're able to see patterns in your behaviors and they're able to bring their enormous experience to help you. I've used the expression before, to be the best version of yourself that you can be. And to serve as a NED, you most certainly need to be on top of your game. The second thing is in boards, because it's Women's Month, and this is talking to also about women on boards. You need to think about the fact that as women on boards, you very often are a minority. So the 30% Club was started to get at least to the point of 30% of women on boards. South Africa is not yet there. I have to say I do have the privilege on some boards of having more than 50% women these days. But when I started out, I was often the only woman. Now, the first thing is, in terms of being in a minority, it's harder to be part of the culture. It's harder to disagree, not because you don't have a perspective and facts, but you have to do it in such a way that doesn't offend sensitivities. And that's not always so easy to read. So in terms of the mentoring and coaching, very often, if you have a mentor or a coach, they will share expertise. And sometimes, if you're entering into difficult discussions, they will help you prepare and even dry run it if you need to. Those are some of the benefits. I know the time is running short, but it really is a wonderful tool. What is wonderful today is through a number of organizations, you can often get access to mentors or coaches quite easily who can help you for specifically this journey. Parmi, back to you.
Thank you. If I can ask our delegates to please give us feedback while we just do closing remarks. The IoD team has shared in the chat box the link to the survey, and there's also a QR code on the screen now to just give us your feedback on whether you've enjoyed the session and taken value from it. Eileen, Louisa, just in 30 seconds each, if you can just give us some final closing remarks, pieces of advice you may have for our audience today. I'm going to start with Louisa.
I think what's essential is for you to be strategic about the sort of board career you want to have, and be clear about the journey and path that you're going to follow to get to that. I think often we get to accept, you want to accept everything, but that will only lead you down the wrong path. So be very clear what you can accept, be clear what you have the capacity for, and be very diligent and lift up other women during the journey.
Eileen?
Thank you, Louisa. I think for me, as a closing comment, I'd love you to sit back and think about, why do you want to be a non-executive director? It's not just a job. There is much more to it than that. You affect the lives of people in the company. You affect the people in the company. You affect everybody in the value chain. So think carefully about why you want to be a non-executive director. There's a tremendous amount of admin and reading and thinking and research. If that's not your music, I would recommend that you don't follow this path. And I'm not saying this to put you off, but I want you to really think about it, because some people think it's this cushy job. What did Parmi say? 4 meetings a year, 1 a quarter, get your money and off into the sunset. That's a way to have a very short non-executive director career, and one that will damage your reputation. So think carefully about what it is that you want to do and why you want to do it. And if you want to contribute, then this is a very rewarding place to be. Thank you, Parmi, and thank you everybody for listening, and Louisa and Parmi for sharing. Thank you, everyone.
From my side, Eileen, Louisa, thank you so much for your time and wisdom as always. I know I have the benefit of having you on the other side of the phone when I need advice, and so I'm sure our members, the ladies and men on the webinar this afternoon have really taken value from your nuggets that you've shared with us. To our members who've joined us this afternoon, thank you so much for being with us. If you've enjoyed the session, and I see lots of positive comments coming through in the chat box, but if you've enjoyed it, please let us know formally on the survey tool so that we can consider maybe making it an annual webinar in Women's Month. Thank you so much, everybody.